Hi, Oscar here from MCCruise. We're fitting up a cruise control to a KTM 1190 today. So I'll step you through the installation process. We'll have lots of little videos which will stream together, and hopefully you can follow it to fit your cruise control to your KTM. With the kit, this is all the parts that come with the kit. So we have a very detailed instruction manual. In this case we're putting on a slimline switch. We've got the computer here with a foam block to secure the computer. We have two wiring harnesses that you'll need to fit up and a little parts bag. And follow the instructions. I'll be breaking in and out to show you what's going on. So thanks very much. So first step, remove the seat via the key, removing the seat up and out, and then removing the battery cover. So it's a matter of pulling this lever back to get those two clips to disengage from underneath the crossbar, and then removing it this way using a Allen key, removing the earth bolt and removing the two earth lines. And then moving forward, if you have the full crossbars or crash bars, the ones that sit up the top here, you'll have to undo those around the front here. But if you've only got, like this bike, the lower crash bars, then there is no need to undo the bolts here. These two, just leave them alone. What we need to do is remove the screws from around the top cowl. That's those three there, another two on the other side, this one here, and then another two down the bottom here. Now these are all Torx T30. Then we undo these clips here, just lightly pulling out there and there, and we'll remove the panels. So after removing those side covers, then we've got a couple of bolts down here, one on each side, and they retain the front cover here, or the tank cover here. And just be careful, as you push forward, you have to slide the panel from underneath here and remove that and put aside the tank cover. So next we're removing the side front panels. There's a screw here and there's a screw right down inside in there, so you've got to remove those two, both again T30s, and then lifting the panel and wiggling the panel up to disengage this clip at the top here. There's a clip here at the top, and then the other clips there, and then disconnect the indicator and remove aside. So preparation for removing the tank, we needed to remove these two fuel filler lines at the top here. So there's one here and one around the back that I've tucked away. They come off this hose here and that hose there. There is some other models of bike which have a Y in there that you can just disconnect and leave on top. Additionally, we need to get underneath the bike and turn the taps off. Also remove the hose, so that's that hose there. Also disconnect the fuel pump, this one here, and disconnect the high pressure fuel hose, this one here, from this one up here. So remember there's two taps, one here and then one on the other side there, so just down there, and we have to turn them off clockwise and then remove the hoses from both sides. Be careful here because the tank's quite low down here. We need to make sure these are tucked away so that we don't catch them on the way out. And then we can get up the top here, remove the front bolt and also the two rear bolts. So two rear bolts are T40 and the front bolts are 6mm Allen key. Now we're going to remove the tank, and by the instructions we need to lift this straight up. So maybe I can show a little bit of detail after we've taken the tank out. Right, we're at the next stage. So the tank, a little bit tricky, so you've got to lift it straight up a little way, very short. So these ones will catch it to stop it from coming up any higher. But basically you can see down here, she comes straight up a little bit, and then we're going to pull it back slightly. Be very careful around these areas here. And here it's very tight, the tank's very tight on these areas. So there's some nice heat insulation on the tank, which obviously over time gets a little bit loose. So just be aware of that. That's what's hanging on with the tank. As I said, make sure these hoses and the connector are well tucked away so they don't catch on the bike coming out. So next little bit, just to give you a bit more room in this head stem area for the connectors down here, we recommend removing the air filters. There's 2 screws, a T20 in there. Just remove this part here, and then you have to remove the panel. And to get it out, basically it's a bit of a jiggle, but comes through, and twist it, and then she comes out like that. So the last part of disassembly is to remove these 2 screws, just to allow a bit of access for that right hand side panel to come out. We'll be routing the wiring harness back to the computer, which is going to sit way back here. Now some markets have a carbon canister in here. This bike isn't fitted with it, but you would have to remove that carbon canister, a couple of screws, move it out of the way, so that you can get the computer to tuck up into that hole at the back there. Now we're going to start the switch assembly. So on this install, we're fitting up our new slimline switch. So you can see it's nicely profiled, and it will be sitting up in between the mirror mount and the switch block. To make that little bit more room, we're going to have to move the mirror mount over a couple of millimeters so that we can get that in there, and it will look like a really neat installation. So we'll see how that looks a little bit later. So as a preliminary fitment or fit up, what we've had to do is we've undone this top clamp bolt up here, and we've just slid this mirror mount over, but that mirror mount also carries the clutch. So be careful that we have enough room in the back here for clutch. Now we're right up hard up against the bar here, so I think we're pretty good, and it's just touching on this rubber grip, and we've got clearance to the switch block. So just something to be aware of and have a quick look at. So that looks pretty good to me. I'll now stick that new slim switch in place and put a cable tie through it. So that looks pretty clear, looks good. So we've fitted up the slimline switch here. We've made the set button about level with the indicator switch, so you can reach over pretty easily to set the button. That's the on-off button, and that's the resume button down here. And this is just an indicator light at the moment. So you'll see that the wiring harness I've taken up with the main wiring harness. We'll probably put a cable tie around that a little bit later on just to hold it up nicely. I've then routed down with the original wiring clips down through here, and then coming back through this way behind the head stem bolt across to the other side of the bike. And then we've popped out here, and we've ran down this side of the bike, under here, down here, under here, and we've brought that wire back up through here. So you can see that wire coming back up through there, so that's coming from around here. And then we've gone back over here, we've removed those bolts to give us a bit of clearance there, and we've just left that wire there. The next step is to find the throttle position sensor connector on this bike, and that's around the right hand side, right underneath the head stem. So it's this 6-way connector, translucent, and it's in a mounting plug here. We need to remove it out of there, a bit fiddly, so we'll get that done. So we removed that plug out of that little bracket by basically unclipping or pulling this apart and lifting the connector up out of the connector. Then we grabbed the TPS harness, which is supplied in the kit. That's the one with the connectors on the end there, and it's got 2 connectors, 2 6-way connectors on the end. And that basically just connects straight between those 2 plugs if you unclip them. And then we're going to put one of those connectors back inside here, and the other one will be tucked up the top there, and that'll be fine. There's plenty of room in there for that other connector. So we've been able to fit that one of the original plugs back into the clip there, and we'll just drop the other one. Actually it fitted nice and neatly in the back here, so just clipped in there. So you just got those 2 connectors sitting in there. Bit of a heads up, be careful where the routing of that switch wire is so that you don't have it going between the wires here when you make those connections up here. But that's all installed there. So we've just taken that TPS harness and we've routed that down along with the switch harness, down along here, underneath here, back underneath here. We've come back up over the top of the shocker mount, so we've come back up here on the top of the shocker mount there, and back down the side here, again with this panel off, nice and easy to drop it through there. Switch harness will finish up about here, don't worry, there's another connector to the main harness, but this one here has to go all the way through right back to the back, because that's going to go directly into the computer. So now we need to locate the front brake light switch. That's the connector that's down here, again on the left-hand side of the head stem. So it's located and locked into a little tab here. It's the black connector, two-way. It's got brown and pink wires on one end, and then it's got grey and brown wires on the other end. So we need to locate that one. We need to disconnect it, and we need to connect our main harness off the computer onto it. I'll show you the finished result. So now we need to retrieve the accessories wiring out the back of the ducktail. So you can see right up the back there, there's a number of plugs, and we want these two down here. So those ones here, and there's another pair over here. Now this pair over here has a red white and a brown wire, and the other pair has a red black with a brown wire. And we need the red black with the brown wire. That is the switch to ignition. That's all we need for the cruise control. The other pair, the red with the yellow with red tracer and the brown wire, are always connected to the battery. So if you've got an accessory that you need, you can always use that one. That's always permanently on. So we're now going to make the connections between the throttle position sensor wires that we dragged through to the back of the bike before to the main harness. So this is in the kit. So I just want to quickly show you how we go about putting those wires in. See those three white dots there? If you push that across, then that will unlock the connector. It's all in the instructions, and then we can find the right hole positions to then fit in the TPS wiring harness. So I'll show you that when it's finished. So using the wiring diagram, we just simply follow which colours go into which empty holes. So I'll zoom right in there. You can see there's a pink wire there, and then there's 4 empty holes to the left hand side. And I've already put the black wire into the empty hole that was just below the pink wire. You just insert them straight through, making sure that those locks are undone, those white locks. So I'll just take another picture of that. You'll see it protruding out the back here. So make sure that's all good. And you'll find that they push in. If you've got some trouble, use a paper clip, unbend it, and just put a little bit of light pressure behind the connector or terminal, and that'll allow you to push it straight into the right spot. You can't, at the end of that, you must lock this white connector again. And if you're struggling with that and it won't lock, it's usually because the connectors aren't through. So when you've got the connector in the right spot, you'll see that there's a little shiny end of the terminal coming through. When you've got that right in all 5 locations, you just pop that over, and that'll lock those terminals in position. So just finishing that off, we've got the black wire at the top here, green white, brown white. Down the bottom here we've got brown and green, and then we've just pushed those 2 pins back again, and that's nicely secured those connectors in place. So very similar on most bikes when you're wiring up the TPS harness. So we've just added some Velcro strips to the back of the computer, and we've tucked that up into the ducktail here. So there's a couple of plastic bosses on the bottom of the ducktail that sort of restrict where it goes. So, and then there's a foam block we supply with the kit that you just push up in there, and that'll hold it up against the Velcro. And you route the wires across the side here. I've already connected the switch, little harness here, connected into the harness switch harness that we routed previously, so it's down there. Now we're just going to tuck in and do the CAN bus dongle, which this harness has got on it. So we'll fit that in, and we'll have another look at it. Okay, welcome back. So we've now routed the main wiring harness. We've taken that brake line, the brake connector line, and we've routed that back down along these switches. We've got the CAN bus wiring sitting here for the moment. That's the next step after we do earth terminal connection. We've got those harnesses. We've cable tied where necessary. We've cable tied the harness in place so there's no chafing. Cable tied this over here, here to the brake lines to keep it away from the engine. So again, put another cable tie in here into the frame, another cable tie to the frame here, another one up the top here, and those brake plugs there. So there's one brake plug there. So when we made those brake plug connections, we just made sure that we got pink to brown and pink and pink attached to brown and brown. So they're over the other side there. This is just the switch harness sitting over the top here. So we'll probably put another cable tie on this just to hold this in place, and it'll be a neat installation. Next steps will be to fit up the earth terminal again, and then we'll be making the CAN bus dongle connection here on this bike. So just as a quick catch up and a heads up on the installation, so those side vents that go into from the pre-filter back into the underneath the tank here, want to be very careful with the wiring in the back there because there's not a lot of space, so make sure you've got plenty of free room for those wires that we took up there. Unfortunately I didn't get a shot of it, but yeah, so down in that head stem area, make sure the wires are plenty loose enough that they can be pushed down so that you can get those vents back into the front of the airbox, both sides. And as you can see, we've put the tank on, so we've made the connections underneath for the tank, fuel pipe, balance pipe, pressure pipe, and the fuel pump wiring. That's all been done. We're now about to do a quick setup of the wide open throttle and idle throttle positions. So we'll just get on the way and do that now.
Is the diagnostics. So we go up here, and the way to put it into the test mode or diagnostic mode is on the control switches. We hold in set and on, and then we turn the key on, and we see a green light there. That means we're now in test mode. So that's ready to go. What we can do now is test the installation that we did by testing all the switches. So front clutch, front brake, rear brake. And what we should see when we actuate those is the little green light flashes. So I pull in the clutch, there's a green light, on and off with each squeeze. And that confirms that the MCCruise control module sees the signal from the switch here, and it would shut off the cruise control if it was running. And if I reach over here to the front brake and squeeze, same thing. With each squeeze, I see a green light, so that's working. And I reach over here with my foot, each time I hit the pedal, green light. So I know that I've installed all the wires correctly, I know that everything is as it should be. So the next part is to move into the calibration mode for the throttle position sensor. The way we do that is we hold the on button and push set 6 times. And if you push 7 times, the bike blows up, I think. But if you push 6 times, just a red light comes on, telling you that you're in the mode to calibrate the TPS. So what you're going to calibrate is no throttle and full throttle. So right now we are at no throttle. I just confirmed that with my throttle here. And you push set. And we see a green light. That indicates, okay, that's low throttle or no throttle. So now I turn the throttle all the way full, and I push resume or decelerate, whatever you want to call it. I get a yellow light marking that. So that's also what's supposed to happen. This is all explained in the instruction book. Now we can confirm that the throttle range has been mapped out by pushing and holding the on button until the light goes green. So there we go. And now if I twist the throttle, just back up a little bit to see the throttle. As soon as I come off no gas, the light starts flashing, indicating that it's getting a signal different than no throttle. And if I go all the way to full throttle, I should see that yellow light again. And there it is. Yellow light, flashing green light in between, solid green light at no throttle. Things are good. Now there's one more thing that we can do with this, and it's confirming that the accelerate and decelerate switches are working, we can actually right here in the garage start the bike, and pushing the accelerate button we can raise the RPM on the tack about 200 each push of the button. Unfortunately, you can't hold the button and have it just continually raise. You have to like keep jamming on it. Now you can adjust how many RPM it goes up or down using the switches, but I found 200 is more than good, so I just stuck with the stock setting. So I'm going to fire the bike up, get it idling, raise the idle with accelerate, lower the idle with decelerate, and then I'm going to raise it again, and I'm going to squeeze the front brake just to show you how it will cut out the engine altogether back to low idle. Alright, so here we go. First of all though, we have to hold the on button and put it back to the red light to get this to work. So, we'll fire her up. And here we go, raising the RPM, get the tack in there. Right down to low idle again. So I'll raise it up a little and reach for the front brake. You can see it drops right away. So that's it. Now we know we turn off the key once everything is set, and it retains it in the memory of the system, and you're good to go.